Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Bolden Sports Media NFL podcast, coming to you in a rather interesting week for NFL news, predominantly in off-the-field situations. I hope you guys have had a good week and are ready to dive into the latest news from around the NFL. And as usual, I'd like to start the show by thanking you very much for listening. And if you are new, then don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this to. And don't forget you can also reach out to us on all our social media pages, which is on Twitter at MRB Sports Media, but on TikTok, on YouTube, and on Instagram, we are at Baldwin Sports Media. So feel free to continue the conversation over there. And if you are a returning listener, then thank you very much once again for making me a part of your week. And I think that's really it. So with that being said, let's get into the first topic. And we start off this week with news surrounding Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. Now, we've talked about the Dallas Cowboys in previous weeks, and it's mainly concerned about the contract of quarterback Dak Prescott and what that's going to mean for the team. And I've always sort of hinted that the problem with Dak Prescott and the amount that he's likely to command and likely to ask for is that it's going to hamper the team's ability to sign and keep hold of the likes of CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons, both of whom are, in the stages of coming up for their contracts to be renewed. CeeDee Lamb is currently in the final year of his rookie deal. His fifth-year option was picked up. This is going to be his fifth year, and for Micah Parsons, his fifth-year option was picked up, so 2025 will be his, but both are going to be looking for long-term contracts at some point. And the issue was there is no way that you could pay all three of them, Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Micah Parsons. But then what sort of team would you be able to have around? Would you be able to go out and get a decent running back? And also the offensive line would need to be taken care of. And there's also Trayvon Diggs, the star cornerback. He is going to need to be paid. Deron Bland, who set the record last year for most pick sixes in a season, what stages, if he continues to play the way he does, is he going to need a contract? So there's no way that you could get every single one of these star players sorted out. And Dak Prescott was going to be, in my eyes at least, the sacrificial lamb in order to pay for it all. But enough about Dak Prescott. This is about CeeDee Lamb, and the news coming out today from Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News is that CeeDee Lamb is set to hold out from the upcoming training camp. The Dallas Cowboys hold their training camp in Oxnard, California. I've always found that a little bit weird as to why they do that. Most teams keep it somewhat local to their destination. Some teams have it within their own regular practice facilities, but whatever. That's why the Dallas Cowboys continue to be the name they are. Because they take their show on the road to near Los Angeles at least, so get them in the spotlight there. But anyway, that's not the point. CeeDee Lamb is said to hold out from training camp, and I think that this method, I've always somewhat been hesitant when it comes to players holding out in training camp, because there is that element of, yes, you are making a statement to the team by stating that if you don't give me this deal, you're going to be missing out on this services. Look how great I've been for you. This is what you're missing. Especially if it's a wide receiver and the number 2 wide receiver just can't quite make the same plays that someone like CeeDee Lamb would make, and he can again use that as leverage to say, look, this is what you're missing out on. Look at this scrub that's behind me. You need me in order to win. I've always understood there's that element of it, but at the same time, you are going to be hampering your own success, as it were, because you are going to be missing out on that training time, on that practice time. When new concepts and new routes and whatever are put into the system. So you're going to be missing out on that time, which could then effectively hinder you further down the line when you most need it. So, is this really the best move now? Of all the players for the Dallas Cowboys for this to happen to the Dallas Cowboys, you could argue that CeeDee Lamb is the one that they really can't afford to the most, because of just how productive their offense is and how important it is going to be for him to be productive and to give Dak Prescott that incredible target to work with. Especially if you look around the rest of the Dallas Cowboys team, we talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and their issue and how they were effectively or could be seen as a one-man team. But you look around the rest of the Cowboys, like Jalen Brooks, Brandon Cooks could be a bit hit or miss. There's no real name standing out there when it comes to, if CeeDee Lamb isn't able to perform, who do they turn to? So at least CeeDee Lamb is going to be taking this from a position of strength and knowledge. This isn't like some third round or third string cornerback that's holding out. This guy is important to them. And I think when push comes to shove, the Cowboys are going to have to sort out him, and I think they're going to sort out CeeDee Lamb first, because as I've said, the way that things are shaping up, I think this is going to be Dak Prescott's final year with the Dallas Cowboys. I think they are just going to have to reset. They can't afford to pay Dak Prescott big money in the long run. So why not have CeeDee Lamb as your anchor on offense, Micah Parsons as your anchor on defense, and then try and get one of these hot young rookies and hope that they can hit right out of the park, like CJ Stroud did, like Trevor Lawrence. If they can hit on one of those quarterbacks right away, then they can just use that instead, rather than having to pay having to pay the quarterback handsomely. Spread that money around, get those pieces, get that extra player in free agency with the money you've saved from Dak Prescott. So I think that CeeDee Lamb, in effect, is going to be effective, if I use the terminology there correctly. But I don't think CeeDee Lamb necessarily needs to do it, because I think he's going to be taken care of. I think he's going to be taken care of anyway when push comes to shove. But as I say, the danger is, yes, he'll be taken care of, but what impact is this going to have on him and, in effect, the team moving forward? That's what you need to keep an eye on. And with that, we move on to our second topic, and this is news that, depending on your level of caringness, it might easily have passed you by, but it's the Sunday Ticket issue. Now, I have never owned Sunday Ticket. I understand the concept and how you can effectively pay to watch any game, even if it's out of market. But I've never really invested in it, just because over in the UK we had Red Zone included, so I could watch all the highlights there. The Steelers were on quite a lot, so I could always watch the Steelers there. So I've never really had the need for it, but I can understand why the concept was invented. If you are a Dolphins fan that lives in Dallas, say, and you don't want to be hamstrung to the games that they show on CBS or Fox at the 1 and 4 o'clock slot, you can pay to watch the Miami Dolphins game, and then whatever game you so choose. But Sunday Ticket has been making the news recently because essentially they have been accused of price gouging, and the NFL has been somewhat involved in this, in effectively forcing the price to be so substantially high that basically no one wants to do it. But then you have the people who did buy it are now effectively being basically saying you charged us an unfair amount, and as a result, the NFL is looking at a settlement, a lawsuit, whichever way you want to put it, of about $12 billion at this stage. Now, I say at this stage because, as Mike Florio, who's done a brilliant job of covering all this, as he has basically said in his brilliant coverage of this, that because of the way it is structured, the NFL are facing a $12 billion lawsuit now because there's punitive damages, and then the settlement was around 4, but because it's tripled, it now has to be forced to 12, and there is the chance that, depending on when they settle, are they going to have to force to pay in and factor in the prices for 2023 and 2024 and possibly 2025 down the road. So it could be even more than that. But either way, when it comes to the payment or whenever they have to pay, he was effectively pointed out and brought up the topic that the players aren't going to be affected by this. The players aren't going to have to pay it. It's not there. But the teams and the NFL are going to have to pay for it. And this is what he thinks is going, or could be, a catapult, if you will, to the NFL going to 18 games. Because there are some NFL owners, as he says on his Pro Football Talk site, that it basically divvies up to around 450-ish, 440-ish million to be paid by each team to cover the cost of the settlement. Now, the easiest way to get around that is to get more money, and there's numerous ways to do it, but the biggest and quickest and easiest way would be just to go to 18 games, get that extra money of broadcasting deal for a regular season game compared to a preseason game, get the extra ticket revenue, get the ad, so on and so forth, get the 18th game in. Now, again, I've made my point about the 18 games pretty clear. I can understand it, but I do think there needs to be a lot given to it in order to make it fair and make it easy on players and their bodies. Whether that be an extra bye week to give them rest, or less padded practices, or there was the weird suggestion when they went to 17 games that you could have 17 games, but players would effectively be limited to 16 games, and you could only play in 16. So there would be one game where basically Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson, whatever player, just did not play in that game, which I find a bit weird. I can sense the strategy behind it. I think it would be good as teams sort of worked out, but I just think that would be a step too far in my eyes. But either way, 18 games is going to be coming down the line at some point, and it is going to be interesting to see if this is what forces it to come, as the NFL and the owners have to chase their losses and chase their money, as it were. Now, if you go to 18 games, again, I'm not the biggest fan, but I can see that this is where the tide is effectively going to go. You would rather it be in a done properly rather than effectively being forced on them to make up their losses as a result of a lawsuit, but it is what it is. But I just don't see how this is going to come about. Again, this is an 18th game is going to have to get past the NFL Players Association, and they are going to have some things to say about it. And are they really going to play ball with the NFL to say, no, this is a mess that you got yourself into, you have to get yourself out of it, don't make the players go through, jump through all these hoops, as it were, in order to get the money from your recklessness, as it were. So again, another thing to just keep an eye on over the coming months and weeks, especially if, as Mike Florio points out, if it's all settled and done now, if it keeps going on and they have to factor in further years into it, then it could get even bigger, and the fine is going to get even bigger, and so on and so forth. But again, if it's not the 18th game, then there might be other ways to go about it. Maybe it does mean that your ticket price whenever you go see your team, if you are in a position to go see your favorite team in person, maybe that's going to be an extra $10 or $20 or whatever in order to make up the thing. So I think that's where, if you weren't paying that much attention to the Sunday ticket situation, again, I wasn't really. I've been keeping up a little bit abreast of it, but again, just because of the situation I'm in, I can watch pretty much whatever Steeler game I want because of the market I live in. So it's never been a big issue, but so I've never really had to pay attention to what goes on or the price of Sunday ticket when it moved to YouTube TV and what have you. Yeah, that was an expense, but it's nothing that I was going to have to pay. But if you haven't been paying attention, I think it's time that you follow my lead and start paying more attention to it, because there is going to be an impact, and it is going to impact you directly in some way. Again, as Mike Florio says, it's not going to affect the players. Their salaries are all sorted. It's not going to be that every player has to take a 10% pay cut to cover all this. That's not going to happen. But the owners are going to want to get their money from somewhere, and it's more than likely going to come from us. If the NFLPA don't agree to the 18th game, it's going to come from us, the fans. So just keep an eye on this, and be wary that it could be hitting you. If it didn't already hit you in your pocket through the Sunday ticket purchase, it might be about to hit you in your pocket in another way with how the NFL sort of worked this out. And so we move on to our penultimate topic of the week, and this one is sort of a combination of three different stories. So you're going to have to keep track of this. So the first bit of news is it concerns Travis Kelce, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously Taylor Swift's boyfriend. Whichever one he is most famous for really depends on which social circle and how much attention you pay to either sport or Taylor Swift. So it depends on which one he's more famous for. But anyway, he was saying on his podcast this week that effectively he is loving London so much. Obviously, Taylor Swift is over there with her Eras tour, or she's done with the Eras tour. She's moved over to Dublin now, I think, but she'll be coming back to London. And obviously, Travis Kelce follows her wherever she goes. As it's a great little romantic story. But anyway, it appears that he is loving London so much because on his New Heights Show podcast, he's basically said that he doesn't want to play for any team but the Chiefs. However, if there was a team in London, he might have to reconsider it. Again, those aren't his exact words, but he's basically said that he wants to see a team in London and he would be okay with playing for them. Now, the reason I sort of combine this news with other news is if you saw the news coming out of Jacksonville last week, you know that the idea of a team in London at least can be put on the back burner for a good 10 to 15 years. Because there was always the talk that the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to be the team to move to London. And it made sense, at least in the eyes of most fans, because they are the team that has established a footprint. They already play a game there. No, they already play a game over there once a year. Shad Khan owns a football team over there, a soccer team. It just happens to be my team in Fulham. So there's a good footprint. So if ever there was going to be a team, it wasn't as if they were going to move the Cleveland Browns over there. It was always going to be the Jaguars. But the Jaguars, by the looks of things, are going to be staying in Jacksonville for a long time because news emerged last week that the city of Jacksonville have effectively approved a $1.4 billion renovation settlement / agreement to refurbish and renovate Everbank Field, or Riverbank Stadium, should I say, that basically is going to keep the Jaguars in Jacksonville. And it needs to get approval from the league, but I can't see any reason why they wouldn't say no. But again, it keeps the Jaguars in Jacksonville for the long run. Now, again, there is always the talk about, well, what is this? What is the London thing? And I remember because I did my master's thesis on the state of American football in the UK. This was back in 2015. Now things have changed, but the sort of rhetoric is still pretty much the same. Of yes, they are going to still have that one game in London, but they are committed to long-term football in Jacksonville. That's why whenever there was always talk of the Jacksonville Jaguars moving over, I said, if you've seen the renovations and the stuff that they have at least planned, they don't want to do that. They would take London as a last resort, as it were, but their commitment is to Jacksonville, and they wouldn't be doing all these things like the renovations of the stadium. Even going back years to the big jumbotron, the big screen, the pools, the everything, the new training facility. They wouldn't be doing all of that if they didn't plan to be in Jacksonville for the long run. Yes, again, the one game a year, they like it. It establishes them as London's team and the UK's team. Good, all for it, keep it, do it. But they are still going to be playing the other 7 or 8, depending on how the schedule works out, for the time being at least. Go back to 18 games. It may be even more moving forward, but the bulk of their regular season games will be played in Jacksonville. And now, as I say at the start of the topic, I think we can put the talk of a team in London to bed, because if it wasn't going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars, then who was it going to be? The teams that are moving. Who are the teams that are threatening to move right now? There are no teams. Everyone really has their stadium sorted. So it's not like the Rams when they up from St. Louis and went to LA. They're not going to move. They're not going to move from LA back to London again. The Chargers, same situation. They're not going to move away. The Raiders always talk about relocation. They've just moved to Vegas. They're not going to be going anywhere. And then you look around the Chiefs seem to be sorting out their stadium thing. And even so, even if it's not within Kansas City, Missouri, they were going to always find a way to be in and around that local area. So it's not them. So there really are no teams that are in danger or threatening to move anywhere. So unless there is going to be this European division, which I know a lot of people talk about, have a team in London and a team in maybe Paris and 2 in Germany, say, which I think would be a bit weird because then you have a 36 team league. Which conference would that go in? How would that affect the playoffs? Would it be the idea of a European division? Nonsense. Now I could see them possibly resurrecting now that there's a new found level of interest in the sport. I could maybe see them bringing back NFL Europe or NFL Europa or one of those, or an NFL sanctioned league in Europe. Maybe use that as a developmental league, an official developmental league, rather than this somewhat partnership or understanding between them and the UFL. Maybe they go down that road, but I just don't see it being a London. I don't see there being a London team in the NFL, permanently within the 32. Let's put it that way. Again, there may be other ways around it, but I do not see the Jaguars or any team really moving to London, or an expansion team. Whichever way you put it, we can, I think, officially put the talk of a team to London to bed, again, at least for the next 10 to 15 years. Right, and on the subject of international stuff, I think there's only really one way to wrap up this show, and I usually take it away from the gridiron, from the sport, but I can't not talk about this story of the Japanese international team beating the USA at their own sport. I do love it. For those who didn't see, the US, there is a international tournament for American football. Again, you may not know that much about it, but it does go on. It's not quite as big as like World Cups or the Olympics are for ice hockey or basketball in that sense, or the World Baseball Classic. It's not quite on that level, but it does exist. And the Japanese team beat the American team last week by a score of 41-20. So it wasn't even a close game. It wasn't as if a couple of the USA players were ill or sick and they narrowly lost out by just a couple of lucky bounty plays. They were dominated in this game. And I do just find it ironic. Now, again, you may not know about this team, but there is the potential for some of these teams, for some of the players in this team to make the NFL at some stage. I've just taken a look at, there was an article from 2020 where they profiled a couple of the players that have played for the US national team in the past. Again, this is an article from 2020, so there may be other players more recently that have joined, but Trayvon Diggs has played for them, DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Young, the late Dwayne Haskins, Mecole Hardman. I'll just keep going down this list. The Griffin brothers, for those of you who know them, Samaje Perine has played for them, Corey Coleman, Jameis Winston has played for them, Todd Gurley, Devin Funchess. So these are not scrubs. Again, not all of them are going to make the NFL, but there are NFL talent or NFL quality players in there. So it's not a big thing because it's not quite a World Cup, or doesn't quite have the prestige of a World Cup, but it is still interesting to know that the USA can lose at their own sport. And I do just want to know if this is maybe a moment for those of you who are really, really passionate about the sport. Is this the moment that basically starts the US's lack of domination towards it? You look at it in, I look at this from a British perspective. We invented football, but none of the home nations have. There's only been one of us has only won the World Cup. That was England in '66. No international tournament wins since then. You look at cricket and how we gave it to the world, and England are not necessarily the dominant force in it. Let's see, what's another one? Rugby is another one. We invented the sport, but the last time a home nation won the World Cup was 2003. All of a sudden, it's South Africa and Australia and New Zealand and all these countries that are routinely beating us for these things. So again, just be wary. Whilst the American football might be the one sport that never really travelled around the world, because again, there's basketball in the Olympics and you see the international product that comes as a result of it, with foreign players. Baseball, again, same sort of thing. Hockey, again, a sport that was dominated or created in North America, but now has got the there's Swedish, there's Finnish, there's Norwegians, there's Danes, there's all these different Russia. There's all these different countries in it that are impacting the way it's played. I know Canada is still pretty dominant, but there will still be the occasional time where Finland or Sweden or one of them, wins a hockey world championship or a gold medal in somewhere. So there is always that somewhere. I just want to know, is this the moment that the USA finally realizes, oh, the rest of the world has caught up to us with, the introduction of the NFL international games that's bringing, a lot more attention and, a new fan base to the thing, with the NFL academies that are starting to grow, and, the international player pathway. Is this the moment that the USA started to lose control of their own sport? I think that's just good. I don't think it is, just because of how much or how dominant the USA is and how part of the culture it is. But I just want to know, is this the moment? It is just going to be. I know I say this a lot, and I have had people sort of bring it up to me, but I do like it. Just keep your eye on this, because again, is this the moment? That's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you very much for listening. As I said at the top of the show, if you are a new listener, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe and reach out on our social medias. That is at Baldwin Sports Media on YouTube, Instagram and TikTok, and at MRB Sports Media on Twitter. And if you're a regular listener, then once again, thank you for making us a part of your week. That is it. I do know that it is 4th of July this week, so I do want to make sure that I get the message out there to stay safe, and you do not want to be the Jason Pierre-Paul of your family, where you lose one or some or all of your fingers. So be safe, be responsible, but I know it's important for you guys in America. Enjoy it, but be safe and be responsible. And until next week, I hope you guys all take care, and I shall speak to you then.